So you're thinking about moving and living in San Diego, California, but you're not quite sure whether San Diego's for you. Today, we're going to be talking the top 7 cons that you got to know before you move to San Diego, and definitely before you write that offer. And we're getting after it right now. What's up, amazing people? I am Liz Lepore, here with the Mortgage List team located out of San Diego, California. And if this is the first time to my channel and you're looking to learn everything you got to know about what it's like to eat, live, sleep, and play here in San Diego and all the best home loans, then this is a channel for you. You definitely want to click that subscribe button, tap that little bell, so you're reminded every single time we release a new video. Because honestly, we do it every single week. And honestly, my team and I are receiving phone calls every single day with people just like you thinking about making that move to somewhere in San Diego or somewhere in California. You definitely want to reach out to us if you're thinking about making that move. Give us a call, send us a text, or an email, whatever is easiest for you. Because honestly, we definitely got your back when moving to San Diego or anywhere in California. Now, let's get after all the top 7 cons that you got to know before you move to San Diego, and definitely before you write your offer in a new home in San Diego. Here we go. So at the top of our list is going to be number 1, and that's the cost of living. So look, it doesn't take a brainiac to figure out that in here in San Diego, it's going to cost a little bit more than living somewhere else like Arizona or Texas, Oregon, one of those other states. In San Diego, we definitely have a higher cost of living, and honestly, it's a lot more than the typical area. With that being said though, in San Diego, we all pay for the sunshine. That's why we call it sunshine tax. So in San Diego, in the last year, we were looking at sales prices somewhere in the realm of about $645,300. But as you know, we've gone into the pandemic, and within that, it has definitely been increasing our home prices here in San Diego. And with that, our home prices are actually north of $700,000, sitting at $754,901, which is a total of a 13.8% increase over 2020. So clearly from the 645 all the way up to the 754, it is definitely a big increase. However, depending on where you're looking at, like in San Diego, whether you're talking about like closer to downtown San Diego, or you're thinking about like North County San Diego, like Escondido, San Marcos, Vista, it may not be as high of an increase in price. So you definitely got to check out the different areas that you're going to be thinking about before you actually put on that offer, just because depending on where you're going to buy that home and where you actually work will depend on how long that route is going to be when it comes to the traffic. Depending on the cost of living, you definitely want to first off check out my cost of living video that I did on regards to San Diego, California. And then if you're thinking about different areas, you definitely want to check out the other cost of living videos that we've done in Escondido, San Marcos, and then comparing, of course, the different cities. Now, when we look at the cost of living with regards to home prices, so home prices have gone up from the 645 up to 754. Depending on, again, the area will depend on how high of that price increase you've been looking at. And if you've been listening to any of the economists that are talking about the home prices, you're going to end up finding that the rallies of the homes are not going on the downward. They're actually going on the upward. Anywhere depending on like 4 to 5 to 8% on the increase depending on the area. I mean, like right now in San Diego County, like Valley Center had an increase of over 11% from 2020 to 2021. So clearly right now it is definitely a seller's market. I'm sure you're aware we have a shortage when it comes to homes that are actually for sale. So there's not a lot of homeowners that actually want to sell right now. There's definitely a lot more buyers than there is sellers that want to actually sell. And with that, you end up having a shortage of homes for sale. And that's kind of what's driving up the home prices right now. Also because obviously the low interest rates, in general, it's a really low cost when it comes to the interest rates and when it comes to the monthly payments. So when you start looking at how much your monthly payment could be today, even with the home prices and the higher cost of living, you'll notice that the monthly payment when it comes to the higher home price is not as bad as you may think. So you got to really do the math when it comes to the cost of living, because it may make sense, it may not make sense. But in most cases, as I've been finding with my clients, is that their monthly payments, even with the home prices that are higher right now, they're actually spending less on a monthly payment than they would have if they would have bought in their house last year in 2020. Now on to number 2, and that's the traffic. Oh my gosh, the traffic in San Diego. Well, while it's not as bad as like New York and Los Angeles and that sorts of traffic, it is pretty bad. I mean, like you definitely got to be using the carpool lane to be able to get from like, let's say Rancho Bernardo all the way down to Mira Mesa. And if you're thinking about going to Balboa and down the 5, you definitely want to be using that carpool lane. So whether you have the fast pass to be able to set yourself up so that way, even though you don't have 2 people in your car, you can use that carpool lane. That may be something that you definitely want to invest in. However, look, carpool lane or no carpool lane, you're going to have traffic wherever you go. But in San Diego, over 80% of the population in San Diego actually has a car. So you're going to have a high traffic time, high traffic population, definitely on those roads. I mean like all the time. But especially like if you're trying to get to work like at 8 a.m. or like 9 a.m., you definitely got to like give yourself up some extra time. So like an extra like 15 minutes, extra 20 minutes, because if it's raining, you're going to end up having a lot of traffic, a lot of problems, and a lot of accidents. So the odds of you end up getting to work on time is not very common because you're going to end up running into some kind of accident if it's raining. And on to number 3, and that's going to be the wildfires and the outages. Okay, so first off, why outages? So look, San Diego Gas and Electric is pretty much what you're going to end up getting when it comes to like your gas and electric here in San Diego County. And obviously they're going to be preemptive. They're going to make sure that no other additional fires are getting caused. And so with that, they will obviously turn off your electricity if there's going to be some kind of Santa Ana fires that they are anticipating. The Santa Ana winds will end up causing fires that have happened in the past. And so with that, they will actually make sure to turn off the electricity in those neighboring areas. Sometimes it's a little bit more just to be extra cautious. You will end up finding that you're not going to have electricity in some of the hottest points of the year, like June or July. Maybe the AC's turned off. I mean, like my AC ended up breaking about a year ago at the highest point of the hottest day of all of Escondido, and it was literally over 110. On that day, I wish I would have had AC. Coincidentally, the day after, all of my electricity actually got turned off. So either way, we were sitting in a whole bunch of fans in our house. When it comes to like the wildfires and the outages, you just got to know it's going to happen here in San Diego. And you also got to remember that they're going to give you kind of like a heads up. So if it turns out like, oh, you know what, right now, I just got an email. Actually, they're going to be doing an outage in the early part of May. So they're giving me 3 weeks in advance notice that they're going to have that outage. So what does that mean? Well, don't spend the time here in town in Escondido. Make sure that you go somewhere else. Maybe you're going to go down to the beach in Oceanside or Carlsbad, Encinitas, going over to La Jolla. Enjoy the beach that's over there because you don't need electricity to be at the beach. Things like that. Back to the wildfires. Okay. So here in San Diego, wildfires are actually really common. And with that, depending on like where you are in San Diego, like Ramona, Fallbrook, even in like Rancho Bernardo, while that's not like an area that has a lot of land, they did have a lot of brush back about 2 or 3 years ago. And that's actually when they had a really large fire in Rancho Bernardo where a lot of the houses ended up burning down. Areas like that have had possibility or have had fires in the past, you're going to end up spending a whole bunch more money when it comes to insurance. So just kind of give you an outside perspective is that when you look at like Escondido, depending on the area of where you're at, your insurance for fire could be about $1,200. On the flip side, you look at like, let's say Ramona, where they've had a lot of fires. And so because they've had a lot of fires, insurance in Ramona is north of like $3,000 a year. And then you go to like the middle part of San Diego, kind of like on Mira Mesa Boulevard, down the 5, that sorts of area. Because they haven't had as much fire, you'll end up finding that your insurance is closer to like that $1,200 bracket. So it's not going to be as expensive. But depending on the area that you're thinking about in San Diego, you will end up paying quite a bit more when it comes to fire insurance. And that's not even including flood insurance. There is some areas that do have to pay for flood insurance. There's some areas in Escondido that you got to pay for flood insurance. That doesn't make any sense. While it's underneath like Dixon Lake, and logically, if the water ever came down off the hill, yeah, that would be something to be cautious about. But I mean, like that's never happened. And yet the people on the bottom of Dixon Lake still do have to pay for flood insurance. And I'm talking like anywhere between $1,500 to like $4,000, depending on how close you are to that lake. So just some additional negative things that you got to think about when it comes to like the cons for San Diego, especially for the fires, the outages, and definitely that flood insurance. And on to number 4, and that's going to be earthquakes. So in San Diego and in California, technically earthquakes are actually pretty common. I haven't felt as many of them. I did feel one just recently. It was like about a month ago, and I was like standing in the middle of my hallway, and that's when I felt like kind of like the house move a little bit. It wasn't that serious though, but at the same time, my husband is very big on making sure that we have coverage. So we do have earthquake insurance. So earthquake insurance is actually not as expensive as like flood insurance or fire insurance. Earthquake insurance, you're going to be looking at closer to like $200 to $300 a year. It's not that bad. So think about like maybe not having the 4 or 5 Starbucks that you have on a monthly basis, and get yourself some earthquake insurance that you're going to need because you're here in San Diego. So while it's still kind of a negative thing on regards to knowing that you're going to have to deal with earthquakes, that is actually pretty common to have earthquakes. However, the majority of them are like 3 to 4 magnitude, so they're not as bad, and they're kind of farther away, so that's why we don't feel them as much. And apparently, did you know that there's about 35 earthquakes in all of California that happen every single day, and about 12 to 14,000 earthquakes that happen every single year? I don't know where all these earthquakes are because I haven't felt them all, but apparently they do exist and they do happen. So it is something that you definitely got to be aware of, that you got to either pay for it, or if something does happen, then you're going to have to cover when something happens in your house. But earthquake is something that does happen here in San Diego and in general. So depending on whether you actually end up feeling it or not, that's going to be where you're actually located. And on to number 5, and that's going to be homeless. Okay, so in the last year, since 2020 to the 2021, the homeless population, you know what, has actually gotten a lot better. So I mean, for me, I don't see a lot of the homeless population anymore. I think it has a lot to do with a lot of the nonprofits, a lot of the groups that have actually helped take and get the homeless population off of the streets. Maybe you see a little bit more of the homeless population depending on like where you're looking or where you're at in San Diego. I know that I was talking to another parent on the softball field, and I said the exact same thing, where I don't really see a lot of the homeless population in Escondido anymore. And then she was the complete opposite, where she actually sees it like right next to her work all the time. So maybe it's just where I'm at, I don't see it. But with that being said, you're going to end up finding that right now, because of what happened in 2020 to 2021 with the pandemic, you're not going to see as much, because there's been a lot more groups, a lot more nonprofits that have actually tried to take them off the streets and getting them into new homes. And while the homeless population is not as visible right now, we are still 4th in the nation in the highest of all the homeless population. And based off some new recent statistics, you're going to end up seeing that there's about 8,000 homeless in the population right now in San Diego. So we are still definitely pretty high, but just a little food for thought, depending on where you're looking. When you're looking about maybe moving to San Diego or living in San Diego or some parts of San Diego, you want to make sure that you actually obviously do your research. If that bothers you, you want to make sure that you check out the homes in that area that you're thinking about in the morning, in the day, in the afternoon. So that way you're definitely happy with your final purchase when it comes to your new home in San Diego. And on to our next con, living in San Diego, and that's going to be our flights. So like our airports. In San Diego, we actually only have one airport. There is another one, which is in Carlsbad. Personally, I don't use that one. I find that it's a lot more difficult to get out of Carlsbad than actually get out of San Diego Airport that's located in downtown San Diego. So that is definitely an option to be able to get out of like Carlsbad for your flight. But also I've actually found that getting out of Carlsbad is also more expensive. So same thing kind of like goes getting out of downtown San Diego for the airport in San Diego. It is a bit more expensive to leave out of San Diego in comparison to leaving out of Los Angeles or Fresno. If I were to be closer over there, it would make more sense. But unfortunately, I'm not. And sadly, I have to end up paying a little bit extra to be able to leave out of San Diego. There is actually only 2 ways in and 2 ways out of the San Diego airport. So you are definitely going to end up finding a traffic jam. And if you have a whole bunch of flights at that same time, I mean, traffic is bananas. You definitely want to make sure that you extra leave on time and early. When it comes to the San Diego airports, you got to be there at least 2 hours. I know that sounds kind of bananas, and why 2 hours? But if you get there 30 minutes, you're going to be racing to the finish line trying to get and make your flight. So you definitely want to arrive just like any other flight, like 2 hours in advance, and then make sure that you've allotted for that traffic, which is the other con that we were talking about, and making sure that you get to your flight and get on the plane on time. So the other thing that you're going to be thinking about when it comes to the cons of the airports here in San Diego, while it does cost you a little bit more expensive, depending on the flight that you're taking, it will end up being more expensive as well. I have actually found that when my husband goes on like a fishing trip, the flights end up getting changed a lot, and therefore they also get more expensive. So right now he's going to end up going on a fishing trip to Alaska, and the hiccup is that the flight has literally been canceled and changed 4 different times, and he's not even expected to leave for another 2 months. So, I mean, we just booked this flight less than 2 months ago, and here we are, we've already changed it this amount of times, and now we just changed it yesterday again. I mean, so things like that, it can get really annoying because you're trying to make sure that, one, you get to, in his case, he has to get out of San Diego to Alaska, and then from Alaska, when he comes back, he's got to meet in Juneau, which means that he's got to make sure that the Juneau flight to the new Alaska flight to be able to get back to San Diego is all at the same time, and that he has enough time. And that's been the major issues as to when every single flight has been changed that he has to go deal with. And then right now we're still having to go deal with and figure out which flight he's going to get because nothing is connecting. And now he's going to end up spending more time in Juneau before he actually comes back. So stuff like that is kind of annoying. And right now we're taking flights to get out for him for his fishing trip. So you just want to be aware that it may, 1, be more expensive, 2, maybe a little bit more difficult, and 3, depending on when you're going to actually go on your flight, it may end up getting a lot of traffic at that time. And one of my obvious ones is seasons. Okay, that's number 7. Look, here in San Diego, we don't have a lot of seasons. However, San Diego County is really large. So we have over 3.5 million people that live in San Diego County. The cool part about San Diego County is that you can even go up to Big Bear and Palomar Mountain, and that's where you're going to find like the extra seasons. That's where you're going to end up finding like the ice, the snow, that sort of stuff is going to be up there. You're not going to really find so much in San Diego County or in San Diego in general. I know that about a month and a half ago, it was Rancho Bernardo or Rancho Penasquitos, I think is when they actually ended up finding hail and finding snow on their grass. So it does happen. I mean, we just saw it in Menifee literally less than 2 weeks ago. Same thing. We actually ended up finding some additional hail, additional snow on my brother's grass. So it does happen. But is it like a season like winter when we're all of a sudden going to go into the cold and then we're going to see snow on an everyday basis? Absolutely not. Do we get fall? Sort of, kind of. I mean, like, yeah, the leaves fall, but does it like just dramatically change? Not necessarily, because even in like August and September, you still do end up finding that it's still pretty hot. I mean, like, that's typically when we end up playing softball and doing the winter ball seasons. And during that time, it's still hot. I mean, like 70, 75, 80, and we're talking like August, September, October, November. Those are still typical weather that you're going to end up getting here in San Diego. And then you start talking about like April and May, and yeah, it does get a little bit more cloudy. Like today, there's no sign of actual rain in the forecast, and literally to this moment on the weather forecast, there is no sign of rain, but yet it is sprinkling outside. So, and it's been raining all day. So, but at the same time, it's still 74 degrees and it's raining. So it's really not that bad if you really think about it. We don't per se have seasons. We do have a little bit of variety when it comes to the weather, when it comes to here in San Diego. And then you start thinking about like when it comes to February and March, that's really when you're going to see a little bit more rain. Even kind of like the end of December, you're going to see a little bit more rain. That's the point of when you're going to end up finding, for me, the softball season, you're going to end up having issues of trying to get a softball field to be able to have your practice on, because all the softball fields are completely wet. And depending on how much rain happened in the prior day will depend on whether the fields are actually accessible here in San Diego to be able to get on and do our softball. So things like that you got to be able to know about and be aware. And then the other last piece when it comes to the seasons and when it comes to our rain and traffic, you want to be aware that we have issues when it comes to rain. And what do I mean by issues? I mean, like, a lot of people forget how to drive here in San Diego, and they just don't know that they have to go slower. And then people end up hitting like traffic poles, and then so that's when you end up having a little bit even more traffic. So here in San Diego, you definitely got to slow down, number one, and two, just realize that we all have to kind of figure that out. Even though we've lived here in San Diego for a really, really long time, it's still not something that we're used to because rain doesn't come that often. And so while we have so many cons, including like all the weather and then the traffic and then, that beautiful sunlight that we get all the time, and then let's not forget about that cost of living here in San Diego, it is still a great place to live. However, if any of these top 7 things are not something that you could handle, then maybe San Diego is not for you. But if you're thinking about making a move to somewhere in San Diego, California, you definitely want to reach out to us. Give us a call, send us a text, or an email, whatever is easiest for you. We definitely got your back when moving to San Diego, California. And if you have any questions, make sure to comment them down below or send us a message. And don't forget, on this channel, we release videos every single week talking about everything you got to know about what it's like to eat, live, sleep, and play here in San Diego. And if this is a channel for you, you definitely want to click the subscribe button and tap that little bell so you're reminded every single time we release a new video. Because honestly, we do it every single week. And until next time, we'll see you later.